Few fictional characters have managed to transform cannibalism into an art form, quite like Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the brilliant psychiatrist whose refined tastes extend to human flesh, and whose cultured demeanor masks the soul of a predator. Since Thomas Harris introduced him in Red Dragon, 1981, Lecter has evolved from supporting character to cultural phenomenon, becoming the gold standard for sophisticated evil in literature, film, and television. His presence has dominated every medium he's touched, from Anthony Hopkins' career-defining portrayal in The Silence of the Lambs to Mads Mikkelsen's hypnotic interpretation in the NBC series Hannibal. The character's influence extends far beyond horror fiction, reshaping how we understand the relationship between intelligence and monstrosity, civility and savagery. What makes Hannibal Lecter's construction truly masterful is how Thomas Harris engineered him as the perfect collision between civilization's highest achievements and humanity's darkest impulses. His character anatomy represents a brilliant subversion of every comfort we take in education, culture, and refinement, revealing how the same appreciation for beauty that creates art can also create exquisite cruelty. Every element of his design, from his psychiatric expertise to his culinary sophistication, to his ability to manipulate through insight, was carefully crafted to serve a specific narrative function, while exploring fundamental questions about the nature of evil, intelligence, and what separates humans from monsters. This isn't just another villain. It's character architecture, designed to make audiences question their own assumptions about morality, civilization, and the thin veneer that separates order from chaos. But to understand how this erudite cannibal became fiction's most seductive monster, we must first examine the carefully constructed trauma that forged his appetite for both knowledge and human flesh. Section 1. Origin and Backstory. Hannibal Lecter's backstory represents character anatomy, operating at its most psychologically sophisticated level, an origin that deliberately obscures as much as it reveals, creating a character whose mystery becomes as compelling as his monstrosity. Thomas Harris's gradual revelation of Lecter's childhood trauma in Hannibal Rising shows how his creators constructed a foundation built on the systematic destruction of innocence through wartime horror. The cannibalization of his sister Misha by starving soldiers doesn't just explain his later behavior. It creates a character whose evil stems from the complete inversion of protective love into consuming hatred. This anatomical choice ensures that Lecter's monstrosity carries the weight of genuine tragedy, while never excusing his choices, creating a character who embodies both victim and victimizer in ways that make traditional moral categories inadequate. The DI. Structural brilliance of this origin lies in how it functions as both explanation and red herring, giving audiences the psychological framework they crave while undermining simple cause and effect relationships between trauma and evil. Harris engineered this backstory to suggest that Lecter's cannibalism began as psychological survival mechanism, consuming others to avoid being consumed himself. Yet the character's adult sophistication transcends this primal origin. The genius lies in how this foundation creates a character whose evil feels both inevitable and chosen, whose monstrosity stems from comprehensible trauma, yet exceeds any reasonable response to that trauma. This anatomical complexity ensures that understanding Lecter's origins makes him more terrifying rather than more sympathetic. The translation of this origin across different media reveals the anatomical precision of Harris's construction. Anthony Hopkins' portrayal in The Silence of the Lambs captures how Lecter's childhood trauma transformed him into something that uses culture and refinement as weapons rather than shields. His discussions of taste and preference carry undertones of loss and rage that make his civility feel like carefully controlled violence. Similarly, Mads Mikkelsen's interpretation in the NBC series shows how Lecter's aesthetic sensibilities become tools for processing and expressing his fundamental disconnection from human empathy. Both portrayals demonstrate how the character's origin creates a figure whose sophistication masks rather than contradicts his predatory nature. The most disturbing aspect of Lecter's backstory anatomy lies in how it suggests that extreme trauma can create beings who transcend traditional human categories entirely. His childhood experiences didn't just damage him, they fundamentally altered his relationship to humanity itself, creating a character who views other people as combinations of threat, resource, and aesthetic possibility. This origin doesn't excuse his evil, but explains how someone could develop the capacity to see human beings as ingredients in both literal and metaphorical senses, making his cannibalism an expression of a worldview that no longer recognizes the fundamental humanity of others. Section 2. Abilities and True Nature. Hannibal Lecter's psychological abilities function as brilliant character anatomy because they represent the weaponization of empathy, taking skills that should connect us to others and transforming them into instruments of manipulation and control. His psychiatric training grants him supernatural insight into human motivation and weakness. Yet this understanding serves not to heal, but to exploit. His ability to read people with uncanny accuracy becomes a hunting tool, allowing him to identify psychological pressure points with surgical precision. The anatomical genius lies in how Harris took traditionally helpful professions and revealed their potential for harm, creating a character whose greatest strengths as a psychiatrist become his most dangerous qualities as a predator. His culinary sophistication operates as perfect character construction because it transforms the most basic human need, nutrition, into an expression of refined monstrosity. Lecter's ability to prepare exquisite meals from human flesh represents the ultimate perversion of civilization, taking humanity's greatest cultural achievements and using them to dignify the consumption of human life. This isn't simple savagery. It's savagery elevated to art form, making his cannibalism more disturbing than any crude violence could be. The anatomical brilliance here lies in abilities that make audiences complicit in their own horror. We're simultaneously repulsed and fascinated by his culinary creativity, forced to acknowledge the aesthetic appeal of acts we know to be monstrous. Lecter's memory palace techniques reveal sophisticated narrative architecture that operates on multiple symbolic levels. His ability to store and access vast amounts of information through mental visualization becomes both strength and vulnerability, creating a character whose greatest asset can also be turned against him. Different portrayals across film and television consistently show how his perfect recall allows him to manipulate situations with chess master precision, while also trapping him in endless loops of remembered trauma and rage. The construction here creates abilities that serve plot functions while revealing character. His mental techniques demonstrate his control and sophistication, while hinting at the psychological mechanisms he uses to process his own monstrosity. Perhaps, most terrifyingly, Lecter's ability to inspire devotion in others represents the ultimate expression of his character anatomy. His capacity to make people feel understood and special allows him to create disciples who willingly serve his purposes, transforming his isolation into a kind of dark charisma. The NBC series particularly explores how his relationship with Will Graham demonstrates this ability. Lecter doesn't just manipulate Will. He genuinely understands and appreciates him in ways that create authentic connection alongside deadly manipulation. This anatomical sophistication creates a character whose evil is made more frightening by the genuine insights and even affection he can offer, making him seductive rather than simply repulsive. But these psychological abilities only begin to reveal the true anatomical complexity of a character whose worldview was engineered to challenge every assumption we hold about civilization, morality, and what it means to be human. Section 3. Complexity and Philosophy. Hannibal Lecter's character anatomy reaches its most sophisticated expression in how his construction generates philosophical questions that undermine the very foundations of civilized society. His refined tastes and cultural sophistication force audiences to confront the uncomfortable relationship between aesthetic appreciation and moral judgment, revealing how the same sensibilities that create beauty can also create exquisite cruelty. The anatomical genius lies in how Harris engineered a character who embodies the dark potential within civilization itself, showing how education, culture, and refinement can serve evil as easily as good. This creates a villain whose very existence challenges our faith in the civilizing power of knowledge and culture, making him more than just a monster, but a philosophical critique of human progress itself. The architectural sophistication of Lecter becomes most apparent in how his worldview functions as both alien and familiar, creating a character whose logic we can follow even as we recoil from his conclusions. His belief that rudeness deserves death, that aesthetic judgment trumps moral consideration, that some people exist primarily as resources for others. These positions are monstrous yet internally consistent, revealing how rational thought can lead to irrational conclusions when divorced from empathy. Different interpretations across media consistently explore how Lecter's evil stems not from madness, but from a kind of hyper-rationality that has abandoned human connection. This makes him more terrifying than any raving lunatic, because his evil feels considered rather than compulsive. The most disturbing aspect of Lecter's construction lies in how he forces audiences to acknowledge their own capacity for enjoying sophisticated cruelty. His dinner parties become theatrical performances where violence transforms into art, where consumption becomes aesthetic experience, where the audience finds themselves appreciating the craftsmanship even as they recognize the horror. The NBC series particularly exploits this dynamic, creating visually stunning murder tableaux that make viewers complicit in their own fascination. This anatomical choice reveals how Harris engineered a character who exposes the predatory potential within refined appreciation itself, suggesting that the line between connoisseur and cannibal might be thinner than we'd like to believe. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Lecter's character anatomy is how his construction suggests that evil might not be the opposite of sophistication, but its ultimate expression. His ability to appreciate beauty, understand psychology, and create memorable experiences doesn't contradict his monstrosity. It enables it, making him more effective as a predator and more seductive as a character. His refined palate extends to human flesh not despite his cultural education but because of it, suggesting that aesthetic sophistication without moral grounding can lead to the most elegant forms of evil. The question that haunts every Lecter story isn't whether he's a monster, but whether civilization itself contains the seeds of such monstrosity within its highest achievements. In the end, we must ask, did Thomas Harris create Hannibal Lecter as the ultimate embodiment of evil, or as a mirror reflecting the potential darkness within human civilization itself? And does the true horror of his character lie in recognizing that the same impulses that drive us toward beauty, knowledge, and refinement might also drive us toward the most exquisite forms of cruelty?